Family dinners at the Rosenthal household had always been an exercise in polite endurance. Conversations were less about connection and more about appearances, my father's latest investment brag, my mother's thinly veiled criticisms of my life choices, and my younger brother's predictable descent into self-made chaos. But this dinner was different. There was a tension in the air before the appetizers had even hit the table. I felt it in the way my mother clinked her spoon against the wineglass, signaling silence with all the grace of a queen about to decree something irrevocable. "We've made a decision," she said, her tone laced with self-importance. I glanced up from my plate, half expecting another plea for a family vacation or a lecture on how I was wasting my potential living in the city. But her next words nearly made me choke on my wine. "Your grandparents are moving in with you." I blinked, wondering if I had misheard. My father nodded, already helping himself to more potatoes as if this had been thoroughly discussed. "It's only logical. You have the space. They need care. It just makes sense." There it was, that casual dismissal of my autonomy. No question, no request, just a statement dressed as family duty. Like a contractor confirming delivery of furniture, not 2 human lives. "It's not up for discussion," my mother added. Of course it wasn't. I set down my fork slowly, my fingers tightening around the handle just slightly. Not once had they brought this up. Not a phone call, not a text, not even a vague suggestion. Just a decision made in absentia, as if I were an employee at the bottom of the company ladder being informed of a departmental restructuring. I could already hear the justifications lined up behind their smug certainty. "We raised you, now it's your turn. It's your responsibility. Family takes care of each other." I'd heard versions of them for years. Usually just before being guilted into covering someone's car payment or emergency dental bill. But this time, I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I didn't so much as raise an eyebrow. I simply nodded. "Okay." That single word must have caught them off guard, because my mother paused for a beat. But then, satisfied with my apparent submission, she launched into logistics, furniture arrangements, medication schedules, grocery preferences. My father even started rattling off repair needs in my home, as if it were already theirs to manage. They had no idea. Because what they didn't know, what I hadn't told them, was that I no longer lived there. 3 months prior, after years of financial expectations and emotional manipulation, I had finally made a decision of my own. I rented out the house. Listed it on a home-sharing platform, screened tenants, redesigned the guest rooms, updated the linens, installed smart locks. It was now a modest but high-demand Airbnb in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The rental income was helping me pay for a cozy, stylish downtown loft where I now lived alone, quietly and happily. I hadn't told my parents for a reason. I knew exactly how they'd react. My mother would have called me irresponsible. My father would have barked about long-term investment strategy. They both saw my house not as a home, but as theirs by extension. Just like they saw my salary, my car, my weekends. So I let them talk. Let them plan. Let them believe they still held dominion over me. But inside, I was already counting down the days to the moment it would all unravel. The moment they would arrive with my grandparents, luggage in hand, assumptions in tow, and find strangers sleeping in what they thought would be their new bedroom. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, just after 10 a.m., I got the call. "We're on our way." My mother chirped, as if she were announcing brunch reservations. "Grandpa and Grandma are all packed. We'll be there in about an hour." I was reclining on my downtown couch, sipping espresso in pajama pants, the city humming below my window. "All right," I replied, casually. No protest. No hint. No warning. Just a smirk as I set my phone on the coffee table and waited. I didn't have to wait long for the second call. It came 64 minutes later. "What is going on?" my father roared into the receiver. Behind him, I could hear my grandmother's confused murmuring and my grandfather's voice asking, "Why are there people in the house?" I bit back a laugh. "Oh," I said, faking innocence. "Didn't you get my text?" "What text?" my mother shrieked. "The one where I mentioned the house is an Airbnb now. I don't live there anymore." Dead silence. Then came the explosion. "You did what?" Her voice cracked with outrage and disbelief, while my father's growl turned into a full-fledged yell in the background. "We already told them they'd be living here," she cried. "They have nowhere else to go." "Well," I said, barely suppressing a chuckle, "unless you plan on booking a stay, you're technically trespassing." I could see the red faces through the phone. The shocked grandparents. The suitcases on the porch. The stunned realization that their perfect plan had been built on zero communication. My mother pivoted quickly to the sympathy strategy. "This is cruel," she said, switching to a trembling tone. "They're elderly. Where are they supposed to go?" I gave her a faux concerned sigh. "I don't know. Maybe your house? Since you decided they needed a new place? We don't have the space." "Neither do I," I said, leaning back into the cushions. "But at least I figured it out before dragging two seniors across town." Then a thought struck me. "Wait," I asked. "Why can't they stay in their house?" Another pause. A cough from my father. "We were going to rent it out," he mumbled. "Oh, I see," I said slowly. "So you wanted to evict them from their own home to make money off it. And just assumed I'd cover for you. It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I said, my voice dropping. "You don't care where they live. You just care about what's convenient. And this time, I'm not it." Before they could respond, I ended the call. And sat back, smiling, as the first domino finally fell. By sunset that same day, the fallout had officially begun. After ending the call with my parents, I didn't expect peace, but I did expect a certain level of theatrical chaos. And I was not disappointed. The next few hours brought a barrage of calls, voicemails, and texts, each one more frantic than the last. "Mom. You can't do this. They're sitting on the porch crying. Dad. This is beyond unacceptable. You've gone too far this time. Mom again. You've humiliated us in front of them. Do you even care?" I didn't reply to a single one. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to engage. For the first time, their crisis wasn't mine to fix. I muted the group thread and went about my evening, cooked a meal, streamed a documentary, poured a glass of wine. Each second of silence felt like a luxury I'd been too afraid to afford before. But curiosity is a wicked thing. Around 8 p.m., I played one voicemail, my mother's voice, quivering with emotion, each word straining for guilt-laced pity. "You left your grandparents in the street. Your grandfather almost tripped on the steps because of those renters. How could you do this to us?" To them? The kicker, of course, was that none of this was actually about my grandparents. It was about control. About the narrative. About how I had refused to play the dutiful son in a story they'd written without me. The next day, the story took a turn. My grandmother called me directly. Her voice was small, frail, but steady. "Sweetheart, we don't want to be a burden," she said softly. "If it's too much, we understand." That broke me a little. Not in anger, but in sadness. Because she had never asked for this. She and Grandpa had been caught in the middle of my parents' schemes, like pawns pushed across the board without consent. I took a deep breath and reassured her. "This isn't your fault, Grandma. You were never the problem." We spoke for a few minutes more. I told her I'd make sure she and Grandpa would be okay. She didn't ask for details, just thanked me with a shaky breath and hung up. After the call, something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't just about standing up to my parents anymore. This was about protecting the only people in my family who had never treated me like a resource. So I started making calls. I reached out to the tenants currently renting my grandparents' house, the same home my parents had unceremoniously planned to monetize. I explained the situation honestly. They were sympathetic. Apparently, my parents had been vague and erratic landlords, changing lease terms, canceling repair appointments, floating the idea of eviction in favor of short-term Airbnb turnover. "I love the place," one of the tenants said. "But we've been hesitant to invest in furnishing it because, well, your dad's a bit unpredictable." Bingo. So I made a proposal. I'd buy the house through them. Not directly from my parents, but by offering to purchase the tenant's position under the lease, with the ultimate goal of acquiring the deed when my parents inevitably realized their passive income was more work than it was worth. It was bold. Risky. But it had one major advantage: leverage. By the end of the week, I had financing secured. And that's when I made the call. My father picked up after 3 rings. "Don't hang up," I said calmly. "What now?" His voice was a grumble of restrained anger, like I was a debt collector he'd been dodging. "I'm buying the house," I said plainly. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Grandma and Grandpa's house. The one you were going to rent out to strangers while pushing them into mine? That one." He scoffed. "With what money? That cute little app job you've got?" I smiled. "With the money you haven't had access to for over a year because I stopped paying your bills." Silence. You can't do this, he finally snapped. You're undermining your own family. Oh, you mean the family that made my life their emergency fund? That one? Another beat of silence. Then he muttered something about legal consequences. I'm not stealing anything, I said, cutting him off. Your tenants are tired of dealing with you. They're willing to sell their lease rights. Once that's done, the property becomes more of a liability than it's worth. You'll be dying to offload it. And you think I'll sell it to you? No, I said coolly. I think you'll sell it to anyone who offers you a clean exit and a check that clears. And when that happens, I'll be the buyer. And I was right. A week later, the deal was done. With the help of a real estate broker and a quiet transaction between the tenants and my holding company, the property was transferred. My grandparents would never know the full details, but they didn't have to. What mattered was this. They got to stay in the home they'd lived in for 40 years. And my parents? They got nothing. No rent checks. No monthly cash flow. No power. When the sale was finalized, I received one final voicemail from my mother. She was hysterical. You betrayed us, she shrieked. You took everything from us. But I hadn't. I'd only taken back what was already stolen. My dignity. My boundaries. My peace. I didn't take anything, I whispered to myself as I deleted the message. I just stopped being your safety net. It didn't take long after the house sale for the fallout to begin, louder, meaner, and messier than anything before. First came the silence. A full week passed without a single call, text, or guilt-laced email from my parents. Not a word from my brother, either. It was unsettling at first, like the eye of a hurricane, calm, but bloated with pressure. But I wasn't fooled. This wasn't peace. It was a pause. The kind of silence used not to make amends but to punish. They were waiting for me to panic, to come crawling back and apologize for disrupting the family structure. Instead, I enjoyed the quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't have to brace for an incoming favor disguised as a demand. No sudden phone calls about unpaid bills. No more being the emergency financial plan for people who hadn't bothered to ask how I was in over a decade. I filled my days with real things, my job, my girlfriend, and for once, a future that felt like mine. I had space. I had air. I had autonomy. Then, as expected, the storm resumed. Late one night, my phone lit up. Caller ID, Mike, brother. I debated ignoring it. But curiosity, it's always the weakness, won out. What do you want, Mike? I answered flatly. His tone was instantly annoyed, his voice low and bitter. You really screwed things up this time. I leaned back into the couch, amused. You're going to have to be more specific. Mom's a wreck. Dad's furious. Grandma's crying every day. They're all saying you betrayed the family. Because I didn't let them commit a slow-motion eviction of their own parents for a little side hustle? I said. Yeah, sounds like betrayal to me. You could have talked to them, he snapped. I did, I replied calmly. They just weren't listening. He shifted gears. Well, who else was going to take them in? They can't stay in my place, one bedroom, paper-thin walls, and I'm barely scraping by. I let out a slow breath. So let me get this straight. You agree they needed help. You agree their plan was garbage. But you're angry because I didn't let myself be the solution again. Mike was silent for a moment. Then, weakly, that's not fair. No, I said, my voice sharpening, what's not fair is that every time our parents mess something up, I get the phone call. I get the bill. And you just shrug and disappear. I could hear him swallowing on the other end. You think this was easy for me? I continued. To tell Grandma no? To hang up on Mom? To buy their house behind their backs just so they wouldn't be homeless? Another pause. I didn't do it for them, Mike. I did it for Grandma and Grandpa. Because they're the only ones in that entire mess of a family who ever treated me like a human being and not a damn bank account. Mike exhaled, slow and shameful. You're right, he said. About all of it. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Didn't expect you to admit that. I didn't either, he muttered. But watching you stand up to them, it made me realize I've never even tried. I softened slightly. You could. You still can. He didn't respond right away. But when he did, it wasn't combative. I'll think about it. It wasn't a revolution. But it was something. The next day, I received a call from my grandmother. Her voice cracked before she could say a full sentence. I'm so sorry you had to do all of this, sweetheart. Don't be, I said gently. You did nothing wrong. But your mother. She said if you wouldn't let us stay, we'd have to go to a home. She made it sound like we were a burden. I felt my heart twist. You're not, I said firmly. You were never a burden. They were. She sniffled. You bought the house, didn't you? I did. She paused. Why didn't you just let them rent it out? Because they didn't deserve it, I said. And because I couldn't watch them profit off hurting you. There was a long pause on the line. Then the softest words I'd ever heard from her. Your grandfather and I. We're proud of you. And just like that, all the noise from the past week, the rage, the accusations, the weaponized guilt, melted away. I didn't need my parents' approval. I never really had. But that meant something. Later that night, the final call came. From the one number I hadn't blocked yet. Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally answering. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Too calm. Too composed. I think we should talk. Are we not talking now? She hesitated, caught off guard by my tone. I just don't want things to be like this between us, she said. We're family. I tilted my head. Your version of family involves manipulation and control. Mine doesn't. We've been struggling, she admitted finally. The rental business was supposed to be our retirement plan. Your father and I. We're not young anymore. I stayed quiet, letting her spin her story. It's been hard since you left, she added dramatically. I chuckled. I didn't leave, Mom. I just stopped paying. Silence. We need help, she said softly. Just until we get back on our feet. There it was. How much? I asked. 5,000, she whispered. I hung up. She called back instantly. I picked up only to say one thing. You abandoned me the moment I was more useful to you as a wallet than as a son. Then I ended the call. For good. After I hung up on my mother that night, there was no part of me that hesitated. No second guessing, no guilt, no voice in the back of my head telling me I was being too harsh. I stared at the phone screen as her name popped up again, twice, 3 times, 5 more calls in a row, and then I did what I should have done years ago. I blocked her number. It took a single swipe, a tap, and it was done. The silence that followed didn't feel like absence. It felt like release. I blocked my father next. Then the landline I knew they still used out of stubborn nostalgia. For the first time in years, I sat on my balcony in complete quiet, no buzzing, no panic, no guilt-laced pleas disguised as family concern. They were cut off. And I was free. The next few days passed like exhaling after years of holding your breath. I didn't have to screen every call or flinch at every late-night buzz. I spent more time with my girlfriend, Lena, real time, not distracted half listening while mentally calculating what bill my parents might dump on me next. I laughed easier. Slept deeper. Ate without checking emails mid-bite. But I wasn't naive. I knew they wouldn't give up that easily. 10 days later, it began again, this time, through new numbers. Unknown. Private. Friends of friends. I ignored them all. Then one morning, an email slipped through from an unfamiliar address. Subject, one last chance. From, Mom. Of course. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Theo, I don't know if you'll read this, but please just hear me out. Your father's been very sick. The doctors say it's serious. We don't know how long he has. We know we made mistakes. But we're your parents. We raised you. We love you. Doesn't that count for anything? You've made your point. But this isn't how things have to end. Please, call me. Just one more time. I closed the laptop. Not out of rage, but weariness. They still didn't get it. This wasn't about a point I was trying to make. It wasn't about revenge or withholding love. It was about survival. Emotional survival. Financial survival. Mental survival. They had trained me for so long under the guise of love, I had to burn the bridge to stop drowning. And I didn't owe them a call just because biology connected us. Still, a voice inside whispered, what if he really is dying? What if you regret this later? I hated that voice. Because that voice wasn't mine. It was theirs. The one they'd implanted in me years ago with phrases like, you'll understand when you're older. After all we've done for you. You'll regret pushing us away. I sat with that voice. Let it say its piece. Then I told it to leave, too. Because here was the truth, they hadn't just made mistakes. They had treated me like a second income. They hadn't just failed to support me emotionally, they had punished me for setting boundaries. And when I finally said no, They called it betrayal. But I didn't betray anyone. I saved myself. The following week, I doubled down on that freedom. I transferred the deed of my grandparents' home into a long-term trust in their name, ensuring no one could ever sell or leverage it against them again. I hired a part-time caregiver for extra support and began visiting them every Sunday for tea. Not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. My grandmother's face the first time she saw the notarized paperwork. I'll never forget it. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I did," I said. "Because you're the only ones who never asked me for anything." She hugged me tighter than she ever had. And just like that, I realized, I hadn't lost a family. I had reclaimed one. Then came the message from my brother, Mike. It was short. "You still ignoring them?" I replied with a single word. "Yes." He followed up a few minutes later. "Can't say I blame you. Things are rough over here. They're scrambling to make rent now. Mom's saying you'll come to your senses eventually." I laughed aloud. "She'll be waiting a long time." There was a pause before he sent one more message. "I don't know how you did it. But I respect it." That hit harder than I expected. Not because it changed anything, but because it meant something. My brother, the family golden child who coasted on low expectations and my safety net, had finally seen the truth. For the first time, someone other than me admitted it. This wasn't selfishness. It was freedom. I spent the next month clearing out every last mental thread they had tangled inside me. I changed my personal email. Set my banking alerts to notify me, not them. Removed them from my emergency contacts. Updated my medical forms. Made my peace legally as well as emotionally. Then one morning, I got another call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't even hesitate. Some victories don't come with applause. Some triumphs don't need fireworks. Sometimes, winning just means choosing your peace over someone else's dysfunction. I stood by my window that day, watching the morning traffic roll by, sunlight brushing the skyline. I sipped my coffee and thought. This is mine now. My life. My money. My voice. My silence. And they will never own any of it again. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the noise you've grown used to, manipulation disguised as love, demands dressed up as duty, finally stops. Not silent, exactly. Just still. Steady. For the first time in over a decade, my days belonged to me. I'd wake up to natural light spilling through the tall windows of my apartment, make a slow breakfast with no phone vibrating off the counter, and go to work on my terms. My software consulting firm was thriving. I picked my clients, declined projects that felt draining, and finally used my income to invest in my future, not patch holes in someone else's ship. Lena, my girlfriend, had moved in last month. She was the first person I'd ever truly let into the full picture of my life. I told her everything, the history with my family, the manipulation, the final break, the house, the sale, the voicemails I no longer listened to. One night, as we sat on the balcony watching the sun dissolve behind the skyline, she asked, "Do you ever think you'll talk to them again?" I sipped my drink and considered that. "No," I said, finally. "Not unless they become people I can trust. And that's not who they are." She didn't try to change my mind. That's how I knew I was safe. But the past, especially the kind you've buried, has a way of knocking on your door when it thinks you've stopped looking through the peephole. And one morning, it did. A new email. Unfamiliar address. Subject, please. I almost deleted it out of reflex. But I opened it. "Theo, this is your mother. I know you've blocked me. I know you don't want to hear from us. But please, just read this. Your father's health is worse than we let on. He's not eating. The doctors say it's serious. Terminal. We don't have much time left. He keeps asking about you. I think he wants to make things right. Please don't let this be how it ends. You're still our son. We're still your family. There has to be something left to rebuild." I didn't cry. I didn't feel numb, either. I just stared at the words, rereading them twice, 3 times, not because I was undecided, but because I was processing how little emotion those words stirred in me. Years ago, this message would have shattered me. I would have rushed to their door, desperate to be the good son. The savior. The fixer. But not anymore. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped needing their love like a lifeline. Somewhere along the way, I found peace without their approval. I closed the laptop and went about my day. That night, Lena and I hosted friends in the apartment. We made pasta, played board games, and drank wine that wasn't bought out of stress relief. I laughed until my face hurt. The next morning, another message came. Subject, one more chance. From Eric, my father. The name alone made me pause. He'd never written to me before. He always made my mother do the pleading, the guilt-tripping, the emotional labor. That was his role, the iron voice behind the curtain. But this time, he had written himself. Theo. I won't pretend I didn't mess up. I won't pretend I didn't benefit from you shouldering more than your share. I thought I was teaching you resilience. What I was really teaching you was silence. I've had time to think. Too much time. If I could go back, I'd do it all differently. Not just the money, the house. All of it. I wanted you to be strong. You were. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I know you probably won't come. I don't blame you. But if this is the last thing I get to say to you, let it be this: I'm sorry. I see you now. I see everything. Take care of yourself. And thank you for protecting my parents when I didn't have the courage to. I read that email 3 times, too. Not because I needed to believe him, but because, for the first time in my life, my father's words weren't about justifying his actions. They were about owning them. And that, I realized, was the closest I'd ever get to an apology. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it. I didn't screenshot it to prove anything to anyone. I just let it sit. Like a stone finally finding the bottom of the pond. The next time my phone rang, it was a regular Tuesday. No unknown numbers. No fake emergencies. Just Lena texting to say she was picking up sushi on the way home. I looked out at the skyline from my office and smiled. I had a home. Not a house, a home. A life I built, brick by emotional brick, on the ashes of expectations that were never mine to carry. My grandparents were safe, still living peacefully in their old home, still thanking me with every small gesture, a jar of homemade jam, a card with Grandpa's shaky handwriting. My brother, Mike, had finally stood up to our parents a few months back. He started setting his own boundaries, refusing to pay for their emergencies. He still struggled to say the word no without apology, but he was trying. As for my parents, I never heard from them again after that last email. I don't know if my father's condition worsened or improved. I don't know if they still talk about me in quiet frustration at the dinner table, like I'm the son who turned cold. And I'm okay with not knowing. Some stories don't need final chapters. Some wounds aren't meant to be reopened. Some endings aren't loud. They're quiet. Like the moment you realize the storm has passed, and you're still standing. Months passed. Then a year. Then 2. One morning, as I watched the city wake up from my balcony, I got a final notification. Your Airbnb property has received its 100th 5-star review. I smiled. Not because of the money. Not because of the rating. But because I had taken back what was mine. And I had given myself what they never did. Freedom.